We are live.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Good to see you again, Elle. My name is Bruce Ross. You can probably tell from my accent that I am not from the US. I'm, in fact, from New Zealand, down the bottom, the southern hemisphere. And I guess by way of introduction, I contacted Elle a few months ago now because I've got a podcast and I'm always looking for people who can give really powerful insights around leadership, how to improve leadership. And Elle was one of those people. I had her on the podcast and we discovered we have a lot in common, specifically around the whole fear, high performance, understanding how the brain works, mindset, leadership capability, or tapping into the leadership capability. And so we had quite a long conversation. Well, we had many conversations actually. And we thought, well, this would be great. Why don't we have a live conversation? So there's a certain structure to it. That is, we'll introduce ourselves, maybe introduce our models, but then there is a very much live, organic element to it. And happy if anyone listening or any attending want to put in the chat box their questions, because we want to be led by you guys. So in the absence of any questions, I'll challenge Elle and Elle will challenge me, and hopefully this will make for a really live, dynamic, unplugged, adventurous conversation. So anyway, that's what's going on.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, when we first met and we recorded that podcast together, I think it was 10:30 p.m. here when we did the podcast, and we stayed up past midnight, my time, because there were so many connections, Bruce. And so I'm just really honored to have met you and to be able to be in this space together and have this kind of organic conversation. And I would love for you to start by telling us, like, what inspired you to get into leadership coaching, to, start your programs. If you could share with everybody, I find it fascinating.
Yeah. Well, it was a great question. Okay, this is one of the scripted questions I had to ponder. And I think the first thing was one of my first conscious thoughts. So I don't know if I was 2 or 3 or 3.5 or whatever, but I made a decision I was going to run from here to there, and I ran fast, and it felt glorious. And in that moment, I had the sense of being able to go, vigor, a reverence for life, and the feeling state fitted with being human. And I've remembered that ever since. And since then, it's almost like I've had this benchmark that I've compared other feelings to that feeling state. And so it's turned up acutely when I haven't felt it. And I've always been looking to reconnect to that. So that was my first, if you like, first conscious thought. In terms of the leadership piece, it was because I was a victim to a terrible leader. Someone that I trusted and someone that I believed in and someone who had the title of leadership was a crusher. I don't know whether he knew he was, but it caused me to want to know what is the difference between leadership and management. And I started reading up about it, and I realized, and then I got fascinated in the whole area of personal development. But specifically, when you're talking about leadership and talking about self-leadership, because you've got multiple levels, it's how do we move into the best of ourselves? How do we unpack or untap or tap into what that is? And I think one of the key things to consider there, I've looked at it from the perspective of energy, that I believe what lies at the core of leadership is, in fact, energy. And this makes sense because when I had that experience when I was 3, I was high energy and I felt like I could do anything. I was the king of the mountain. I could run anywhere, do anything. And that's an essential sense, I think, as a leader. But more importantly, the job of a leader is to give energy. And the job of staff, just like a parent, the job of children is to suck their parents' energy. The job of staff is to suck the leader's energy. So that caused me to think, well, what is it? If it is that energy is important for a leader, and think of it this way, that when we have high energy, we're in the best of ourselves. So we are more confident, more open, more authentic, more relaxed, more intuitive, more creative. We're able to connect with other people in a natural leadership state. When our energy level is low, we are more fractured, disconnected from ourselves and from others, We're not the best of ourselves. So therefore, just from that simple consideration of leadership and energy, I started to look around at, well, what saps our energy, what sucks our energy the most. And this is where you and I come in, we've got common ground, which is this fear and worry and anxiety. And the whole mindset piece, that's what sucks our energy. Mm-hmm. But also I'm interested in how do we top up with high quality energy. Anyway, so that's a bit of an intro from me.
Nice.
What inspired you to get into this area, Elle?
Yeah, it was kind of like you. There were elements of it that started when I was very young. I've been a performer since I was very young. I'm a violinist and a musician, professional musician. And so I've always been performing at a high level. I was one of those kind of, I call it wide bandwidth. I can do a lot of things, kind of like a polymath. I was supposed to be an aerospace engineer, but no, I wanted to go into sports and music. You know, there's a lot there. And so I've been coaching and teaching since I was in high school. I had my first violin students in high school. And because of an injury, I started coaching athletes as an apprentice coach to my coaches. I didn't want to leave my team. My team meant so much to me, and I was our distance captain. I didn't want to leave my team. So I asked to apprentice coach with two really wonderful men and learning from them. But I brought something special. Kids in my class, not just the girls on my team, but also the boys on the boys team, started coming to me and asking me how to stay calm before their events, especially at the big meets. And I remember one meet, it was a big meet, I'm sitting on the ground and there's a line of people waiting to talk to me.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, so that was a little germ of it. And then all my performance experiences in college and university. And then when I got to 2010, so 11 years ago, I wanted to start my own business. After years in a nonprofit sector and being a CEO and doing all of that, I wanted to create something myself, for profit actually. So that was the dream anyway, right? So for profit. I started working on a financial concept because I've taught financial management to nonprofits for years, and I wanted to just pull that out and make it bigger. So I put a mentor in my life, and this is something that I encourage my clients. My clients come to me as a coach and a mentor, but having a mentor in your life where you can really lay out ideas and your goals and your dreams and get a second perspective, a second pair of eyes on it. That's exactly what I did in 2010. And when I took my ideas to someone in a completely different field, by the way, it was an economic developer. He said, wow, this is good. Try this, adding things in it. But then he paused and he said, you know, this is all well and good, but I've read your biography online. This is not what you should be doing. And so I was kind of like, okay. He goes, you have incredible amount of talent and I think you need to be doing something different. And just 2 nights later, I have 3 sons, and our eldest 2 sons asked if I would coach their high school baseball team in my mental toughness tips, is how they put it. And I just started laughing, like, who wants their mother in the dugout, right? So, but I realized how serious they were, so I started writing. My husband took the writing, tightened it, put baseball graphics in it that would be funny to the kids. And so I ended up with a pamphlet, took it to the coaches, and the head coach hired me on the spot to be his private coach. And then the department, I've taught at a college for years. My department chair found out what I was doing. She literally grabbed her checkbook and wrote a check. She goes, I need to start tomorrow. Can I please learn this from you?
Wow.
And so it was very organic. We had 2 paying clients and a whole baseball team to start this experiment of this method that I codified, created curriculum, and I call it the pressure-free method. And what I mean by that is that no matter what pressures come your way, you can stay free of triggering the fight or flight stress response. Most of us are unaware we're even triggering it. I was unaware. I was in denial. I didn't think I needed my own method, to be honest. And I started using it on myself, and I could not believe the transformation. So I think about when you were saying about the leader that you knew something was up and you needed to figure that out. That leader was probably triggering fight or flight a lot.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that is key. I did it too. I mean, most leaders do. And so, so it's really interesting when you, I call it breaking the stress cycle. That is what I do. And that's how it got started. That was
Brilliant.
11 years ago, April. So
yeah. For me, so there was an upward trajectory around people hearing what you did and saying, "Hey, I want some of that." For me, there was a real kicker, and that was in two daughters. 2016, our younger daughter, 25-year-old Danny, was diagnosed with lymphoma cancer, and in the process of that, I mean, unfortunately, 9 or 10 months later, she passed. And that was horrific and horrendous. And there were a number of, and not to go into all of that, but there are a number of what I call gifts, Danny's gifts, that live with me now. One of them is that when that happens to you, when something as cataclysmic as that happens in your life, you can't help but start to examine and question anything and everything, including health. And whilst I've got a passing interest in the health and fitness and so forth, I had to dig much deeper. And what I came to understand at a very simplistic level was you've got health and well-being, you've got your psychological immune system or your mental agility, then you've got your biological immune system, which keeps you, COVID is the thing that's attacking that. And then you've got disease, and death. And we all have these diseases in us. And the thing that cuts through the firewall of these protections is stress. And so whilst I had experienced stress, when I started Ignite Business Leadership, I was an employee and I was made redundant. And they said, here's some money to set up a business. We're going to keep using it for a couple of months, but that's it. And I went, great, yay. But I remember waking up at 4 a.m, not able to get to sleep, in a state of anxiety, panic, and anxiety. And so, because I was the sole income earner, 2 kids and my wife, and I didn't really have a business, and so I was starting from inadequate. At least that's how it was in my head. Wow. So I had a visceral experience of it at that level, and then an existential experience of it with Danny. And so this whole area of extreme stress, worry, anxiety, overwhelm, the treacherous nature of it was something that I knew at a personal level I had to address, but also because 2016, this is pre-COVID, what we're now facing is that at a public level, massive and continuing and accelerating uncertainty and overwhelm and worry and so forth. So those were some of the key drivers for me. And so I look at this thing of stress, and this is where the whole flowpreneur piece came in, because preneur, obviously 2 words, preneur, to do with your drive, your mojo, you get up and go, and then the flow is peak states of consciousness. So how do you thrive? How do you stay in the zone? Is it possible to stay in the zone in the face of stress and worry and anxiety? And so that's the underlying driver for me. And that's what we recognize was in common, because we're both after supporting people for high performance.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Beautiful. Can you share, I'm curious with the people that you work with, and we can do like pre-COVID, what are some of the major stressors that you see that what your work does is it helping people with? Like what are they really, what are their secret stressors? Now, some of them are secret. They don't even tell anyone until they get to us, right?
Yeah, so on the face of it, you say, well, I feel really stressed, but I think people have come to accept a high level of stress as normal. And so they don't necessarily differentiate that as it's an issue. Right. Because of so many things going on, the nature of social media, the nature of being so wired, for most people, they consider tired, wired, and stressed as normal.
Right.
And it's only when you get to the extreme end. So when you say to me, what are the symptoms? people typically don't come and say, I'm really stressed. They recognize that they're not present for their family, or they're distracted. They recognize that they're stuck in like a Groundhog Day perpetual process, and they can't think out of it. And they recognize that they're working hard, so there's an overwhelm at work, but not, and so that takes away from work-life balance, so they're not being able to spend the magic moments with their family. But also, even at work, is a general sense of malaise or loss of mojo, loss of edge, and just not quite sure what's going on. I know one guy was talking to me about, he'd get to work and he literally couldn't get out of the car to walk up the stairs to get to work. You know, so there was that sort of, the handbrake felt on. And he's a great guy, really. He was very competent. He was the chairman, he was a director, he was a community member, family. I mean, and he couldn't think past that, couldn't get past that. So it's curious to me that it's not actually stress that gets people in the door. It's when it's gone to a certain point and they're locked, they're stuck.
Right. Yeah.
What about for you?
It's similar for me, that most people come to me because they want to perform better. They want something bigger, better, and they want it to be easier.
Yeah.
So that's what they're coming to me for. And I never thought of myself as a stress coach, right? But I hear my clients telling other people, oh, she's my stress coach, right? So I've kind of like accepted the fact that is a key piece of what I do, because I teach them about the stress response. But some of the secret things they'll tell me is they may have a chronic disease that's been going on for a long time. Nobody else knows they have it. Sometimes even their family members don't know they have it. They're keeping it close to the vest, but it's eating at them that they have it, and what could happen if they don't take care of it.
Wow.
So that's a little secret one. Another is that they're not sleeping, or they get the 2 a.m., 3 a.m. wide awake. They're not getting a real night's sleep. And that's one of the things that I really help people with, is finally get a real night's sleep, so that waking up early or waking up too soon or in the middle of the night. And some people even admit, I had a quality control engineer said, I wake up completely panicked about my projects. Just not even a question, just because there's so much he's in charge of, and he just feels so, responsible for it all. So high level of responsibility. I think when you're a high achiever, you're in a leadership position, you have taken on a huge role of responsibility. And there's just moments where it just feels like you're on the edge of the cliff. And I'll give one more, and that is that I've had people say to me, I feel like everything I've built and created is a house of cards, and it just takes one little thing and the house of cards is going to fall.
Wow.
So whether that's something in their personal life or health or at work, like just one little thing, and that whole business could just collapse, or the whole thing they think they've built feels like it's just on the edge of the cliff. So those are 3 for me that I've seen and heard.
Yeah, right. So I think, this is great by way of introduction, but I'm sure the listeners are wanting to find out more about stress, what to do, how to do it, how to integrate what they're doing and improve what they're doing. So tell us about stress, the stress response. How do you know if you've got it? Where do you pick it up?
Right.
Help us unpack what the heck is stress.
Well, I love what you said about how people are living with such a high level of stress today, they don't even realize what's going on. That's so true. Because there are no more saber-toothed tigers. We've taken care of a lot of the big stressors. So we manufacture it. It's emotions, it's feelings. So I've boiled it down to what I call the A emotions. When you feel angry or annoyed, and that's kind of on a continuum, afraid or anxious, which can have 2 kind of different feelings to it. And then anytime you feel ashamed. So sometimes, in fact, I think I mentioned to this when we were privately speaking, I had a few people in a survey that I did say that one of their biggest stressors is how much extra weight they're carrying on their bellies. And they're fine when they're seated, but when they stand up in the boardroom, they're ashamed. They're ashamed of what their body looks like, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
So it can be a shame from the past, a shame currently. So I have people map out like what causes them to feel those emotions. Those are emotions that are going to prime you to go into fight or flight very easily. Now, the thing that I learned in 2010 in my research that just really made it all come together, two things. One is that when a male triggers fight or flight, there are two floods of hormones and there's a cycle to what happens. The cycle can last up to 9 hours before all the hormones are dissipated out of your cells and they're back to normal. Well, 9 hours, that's your whole workday or your whole night trying to sleep. But for females, it's an up to 24-hour cycle.
Wow.
That is such a differentiator. It's a reason for the glass ceiling, because if you can't trust a person's emotional response, you won't promote them. And if a person is in the stress response for up to 24 hours, their ability to respond, they could seem very reactive or overreactive or pouncing, you know, or going the other way. Like they're not what I call their true selves. You're your stressed out self.
Yep.
So 9 hours and 24 hours, both of those lengths of time is just way too long. And chances are you're now vulnerable, you're going to trigger again. So when I really got into it, I'm like, okay, who's walking around the planet and not in the stress response?
Well, adding to that, there is a compounding aspect, and that is we have a negative bias in the brain. It's part of how the brain is wired for survival. Pick what's wrong with the pattern. So if you see something that's not right with the pattern, you go, oh, alert. And that's just simply survival. And that part of the brain works 400 times faster than the neocortex, which is everything that we want in our lives: clarity, understanding, perception, insight, rationality, decision-making, behavior modification, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got this predisposition. If there's a beautiful picture and a gory picture, we spend 6 times as long on the gory picture than we do on the beautiful picture. So we have this predisposition to kicking off the negative or the triggered or the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-flight nervous system. And so we're even wired for stress.
Yes. And depending on how you grew up and who was influencing you, you have habits of reactions that are generations old. And it might not be your guardians or who took care of you. It could have been an influential teacher, an influential boss, or peer, someone you looked up to and wanted to emulate. You picked up all their little mannerisms, and those mannerisms include triggering the stress response. So when I'm working with my clients, we work to uncover all of those little secret things that you might not even realize you're triggering over. Annoyance is a big one for me. I don't get very anxious or angry, but boy, do I get annoyed. I get annoyed at all kinds of little things. And so, you know, it's really that annoyance that I had to work on significantly for myself. So that, and then the other huge, I call it a download from above, but it was actually like reading many different research reports and NIH studies and all kinds of things on the stress response, that from a resting heart rate, it takes about 10 seconds before the amygdala, the heart rate, and the adrenal glands all do that stress response. That all happens. You've got about 10 seconds before the heart rate can charge up high enough for the adrenal glands to release. So 10 seconds is a pretty long time. So all of the tools that I teach in my course are ones you can begin or even complete within that 10-second window. So as we start working on what are those triggers, do you notice them in your day, especially the first part of your day? That's so key. Most families wake up and it's, hurry up, we're gonna be late. All you have to say for everyone in the household to have triggered fight or flight. So now if you have a little one who you worked on their math facts the night before and they go in to take a test, they can't remember. Because when you talked about 400 times difference, that's only if you trigger fight or flight. When you don't trigger fight or flight, your cortex and your hippocampus work. But in the stress cycle, there's two floods, and it's like a roller coaster for the hippocampus and the cortex. They cannot function fully. So my clients who break the stress cycle, they're like, I've never thought like this in my entire life. Most of the people that I work with are very brilliant. So I believe that every human is brilliant, by the way. We could take anybody off the street and bring them in here, and they could learn this and tap into their true brilliance. But the stress hormones shut down that brilliance. They keep us locked in fear. The media keeps us, everyone keeps us locked in fear. So we will just overreact and keep buying and keep drinking and keep smoking and keep, trying to feel better. When really, with what you do and what I do, honestly, what we really do, Bruce, is help people feel better again. Maybe for the first time.
I think it's, I was thinking about what is it that actually happens when you're not in the fight flight, when you're in that more, what I call powerful state. I have a name for it. I call it primal and powerful. So that primal is when that part of the brain's been triggered, and powerful is when we're more our relaxed, open, energized self. Freedom, spaciousness, and ease. And so that, to me, that's what I experienced when I was a kid. And so that, to me, is like a homecoming. And so I feel an absent when I'm not there. I know I'm not in the fullness of myself. And there's part of me is sad about that, because I'm recognizing I'm not in that fullness. And when you look out, and there's so many stresses, there's so many things that are going on, which, look in the world, the uncertainty factor,
right?
The overwhelm factor, the informational overload, the things that we used to rely on and could depend on that are no longer stable, or we've seen through them that they are weak and can't be relied upon. That stability is gone. And so it's almost like wherever you look out there, the stabilities aren't there. So therefore we've got to somehow find stabilities or securities in ourselves first. Yeah. So I think this is essential work. I think it's at a very physical, practical health level.
Right.
I think it's huge.
Yeah.
So what for you, perhaps if you could share some tools what are some things that could be done quickly, or whatever, what sort of tools?
Yeah, so my tools fall into 3 types, and I'll give an example of each type. So one is there are body tools that I teach, using your body to prevent the release of the hormones. The second is mind tools, using something here, cerebrally. And then the third is what I call life design tools, which are sometimes some of my clients' favorite tools to use. So an example of a body tool is to simply relax your abdominal muscles. So we've been taught by a lot of people, including trainers, to keep our abs very tight. When the abdominal muscles are tight, the brain is primed to trigger fight or flight, because that is part of our body armor. When your abs are relaxed, you instantly, through your brain, you tell your brain you must be fine. Because you're not going to go into a dangerous situation with relaxed abs. You're going to tighten your abs to protect the most precious organs. And you'll also tighten your throat. So I was just working with a client today on getting her throat more relaxed to attract more business. If your throat is tight and grating, you will repel people. And if your abs are tight, you will repel people. So if you're in the business space, if you can learn to relax your abs in meetings, relax your abs when you're on camera, in fact, someone just got a really great photograph, and they had heard me speak about relaxing their abs. And it was, she typed right in, she goes, "It's because you taught me to relax my abs." And her photograph is gorgeous. And it's because the life force, she can now breathe. If your abs are tight, you cannot fully breathe. So when your abs are relaxed, it's just a quick neuroscience trick. You can do it in 10 seconds, and no one's going to look there. People who are afraid they're going to look overweight or whatever, don't be afraid. The energy is going to now pour out of your face. They're not going to look there. So relax abs is easy. Second one is a mind tool they can do. One is just, I call it the empowering question, or flip the switch. So when you start to have that negative criticism, because high achievers usually do have a lot of negative critical talk. We've been raised that way too. And critical talk is great. It's how we improve and get better. But if there's this thing that causes tension or worry or anxiety in it, it's not helpful. So when you notice that, and usually you will be prefacing things with why questions, like, why can't I get this done? Why can't I finish this project? Why am I so stupid here? Or, why am I not good enough for this company? Or whatever it is that you're thinking. If you hear why, that's a clear sign, wrong question. So my questions that I have my clients ask are, how can I? What can I?
Right. Yes.
So how can I solve this? And I usually have them include adjectives like, how can I solve this elegantly?
Yeah.
How can I solve this in a timely fashion?
Yes.
Really get a little more to the question. But even if you can't think that way at first, it's like, okay, you got the 10 seconds, like, okay, how can I solve this? And instantly the brain loves to answer questions. And if you keep all the lights on, that's why I call it flip the switch, keep all these lights on, you're going to get amazing answers. The other thing I do, I have to admit my son here. My son's coming in. I'll make sure to mute him too. So that is just an example of a great quick little mind tool. Welcome, Hugh. I'm going to mute you. Welcome to Bruce and me here chatting up.
Hi there, Hugh.
Yeah, and then the third type. Go ahead. You had a question.
No. This is great. I don't want to interrupt you. I was just going to add something, but no, you go for it.
So an example of a life design tool is one that I call the spirit of contribution. We're a very competitive society today, but if you can start to contribute more, and I took this out of The Science of Being Great by Wallace Wattles, or The Science of Success, written in like 1910 or something like that. This idea of contribution. So the way I practice it is when I cross through a doorway. When you cross through a doorway into your office, how can you contribute? Cross into your home, cross the threshold, how can I contribute? Most people come home, cross the threshold, and start complaining and moaning and what a crappy day they had and da-da-da-da. But what if you walked across the threshold and asked yourself, well, how can I contribute? What kind of conversation are you going to have with people you love when you're in that mode? So thresholds are where I have people think about that. And I can spend like an hour talking about competition and contribution, but that just gives you a little taste of this idea of, not reacting and complaining and going into all the negative behaviors that are going to deteriorate your relationships at work and at home. People complain about home at work. They complain about work at home. And now that we have so many people working and living at home at the same time, it's really getting all convoluted. So that's an example. Can you give us an example of how you help?
Yeah, well, I'd like to unpack something that you said there when you walk through a threshold, because part of all of this, there's so much we know, but how much do we actually do? How do we actually apply? So even from today, you could say this, and in my head, I go, oh, that's brilliant. Then how do I apply it? And this is where things like what you've just done, which is what's called habit stacking. What is a habit that we have in our lives, walking through a door, and we stack something, a positive something, onto it. And that way so as an example, I knew a guy who wanted to get fit. And so he would do, when he went to the toilet, he would do air squats so his bum touched the toilet. And so his connection was, rather than just going to the toilet for relief, it was going to the toilet to get fit. And so he stacked, and because he knew he was going to the toilet however many times a day, right? So that's 10 times that number of squats. So what you were doing there was stacking a habit, walking through a threshold with a specific idea. So I've been playing around. So one of the things around flow follows focus, being in the zone. But one of the biggest challenges to focus is distraction. And we have phones, they're called smartphones, but they actually cause us to be so distracted because energy flows, retention goes. So, oh, there's a notification, bit of energy has just gone there. Oh, there's a bit. So I've just leaked a bit of energy. Now, they are very, very cleverly done, cleverly architected to grab our attention. Attention is the medium of the future, and it's hard to get off a phone when you're on it, Facebook feeds, and it's only 16-second video. And, oh, what's another one? It's only 3 minutes to watch. Very clever. Anyway, so I've noticed this, and there's part of me said, well, you're spending too much time, Bruce, on the phone. So I thought, that's it, cut it out. Now, that's quite a hard habit because every time you look at it, there's part of you go, oh, but I like it.
Right.
So a way to get past that, and I think these are the sorts of subtle hacks that we all need. I've recognized that gratitude is a very powerful mind tool. It gets us into a state of being better than affirmation. Affirmation is like, I'm a millionaire, billionaire, I'm a billion. But there's a very strong bullshit detector in the brain that says, no, you're not. You're working at Walmart or. But gratitude is an actual recognition of something that is fact. So I'm very pleased I've got air to breathe, and I'm very pleased that I've got the health that I have, and I've got my wife, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the brain isn't rejecting it. So that's one of the reasons why gratitude is so powerful. So what I've done is I can actually watch as much as I used to on the phone or get distracted. I give myself permission. But before I turn it on, I must come up with 5 things I'm grateful for.
Oh, that's a cool habit stack.
And so what you're now doing, and so what I've found is that I go to it, and rather than going into the automatic, distracted, lose energy, get lost in it, I've got to maintain some intentionality. I come up with 5 things, then I come up with 5 more because they're so easy, and think, do I need my phone anymore? And I can put it down. And so now things are starting to work. So this is how I think the whole area of when we learn something, we need to have the ability to be able to integrate it, as you so masterfully did, walking through the door, to do with contribution. Now, the other thing that I'd say about contribution from an energy perspective, because I look at life through energy, the higher the level of energy, the better we are, is contribution is about giving energy, as opposed to competition. I want to weaken them, but in the weakening of them, I weaken myself because it's an insecurity that I'm coming from. I'm not as good as, or I've got to bring them down, or I've got to be somehow better. And so if you look at it from an energetic perspective, I walk in the room and how am I going to contribute? How am I going to give of my energy? And so what that does do is it raises, if you like, the energy in the room. And certainly contribution, participation does that. So that's the other thing. Those are the 2 things that I picked up from what you said about I think it's brilliant. How am I going to contribute as I move through this threshold? It's stacking. So whilst we're here, because there's an organic nature of this phone call, what are some other habits that we could stack? Let's just see if there could be some value in that. And I don't mind if there are questions coming from the attendees as well. If you've got a question, you could.
Yes. If you have a question, pop it in the chat as we're going along here.
Yeah.
I was instantly like grabbing my phone and doing squats. Like, if I'm going to scroll, I have to do a squat for every scroll.
There you go.
That's just brilliant. That I was just sharing with the client that the mindless scrolling, the thing about the phone, or if you're like into a lot of blogs, my husband loves Michigan football blogs. That's his thing.
Okay.
There's no end to those. That's the other thing, is that there's no end to it. And before we had all this, there was pretty much an end to it. You got the paper in the morning, there's an end to it.
Yes.
Tomorrow is the new paper, right? But there's no end today. So we do have to put in some habits to prevent us from just wasting hours and hours. So that's a really great point but what I loved is how you did that stacking of the gratitude that even makes the phone less important, like
less effective. Yeah, because I've got my dopamine hit. I don't need the phone, because we go to the phone for the dopamine hit. Every time there's a new, it's like, oh, because the brain loves novelty. Oh, what's this? Oh, what's that? And there's a little bit of a hit. And that's what makes it so addictive. Mm-hmm. The other thing I was just thinking of, because one of the things I remember you saying is you get, it's important to integrate the brain and the body, is that when, I can't remember what it was, some exercise, but you get people to move their arms. Right. And so it could be that when you reach for the phone, you've got to take it up high, or take both hands up high, bring it down before you watch it. And so that way you're actually bringing a bit of at least some activity, or you could even be a little bit more, I guess, scientific, because we're hunched over our desk. Maybe the movement is take the phone, put the hands behind the back. Anyway, I'm just thinking of ways that we could stack habits.
Yeah. One I do is because people are in their, well, not as much as they used to be, but in their cars a lot. Yeah. The car is a place where you can learn how to do some of my body tools. And because most people, if they drive more than 15 minutes, have triggered the stress response. So any drive that's more than 15 minutes, it's been, there's a few research papers on that. So it's a 15-minute commute is too long. And it actually doesn't have to be just a car. If your bike commute is 15 minutes, there's usually something that will happen in that length of time that will trigger the stress response. So, so it's amazing to debunk all of that. But for the car, and I'm going to share what one of my clients did. So I always have people grab their butts and sit on their hamstrings, which is something I learned from my body coach. So the butt is supposed to support the lower back. This is why so many people have lower back problems. And you're supposed to sit on your hamstrings. So it's easy to get up and down. You're in action mode. And so here's what she does. She takes an imaginary fishing pole and hooks the waistband of her pants and picks up her butt to sit down.
Oh, so she tilts it back. Okay.
It's like if you grab your butt and pull it back, so you're sitting on the hamstrings or the
oh, I see what you're saying. Right. Yes. Yeah.
Well, for her, she just did this thing with this fishing pole. And so she does it every time she gets in her car, and she does it every time she sits at her computer. So at least those two, and how many times she does that? Quite a few times during her day. You get up, leave your desk, and then when she comes back, she just fishing poles her butt back up.
Nice.
So anytime you take a chair, that's a place you could stack a habit, a new habit, put something new in. Yeah, kind of like a bathroom thing, that's a good one.
Well, one of the things I've noticed, because when it comes to distraction, we can be distracted by external things like a notification or someone at the door or whatever it might be. But we can also be distracted by our own inner voice. And that, in fact, is where you call it the inner critic, the inner heckler, the thing that's challenging you, that you're not good enough, or that's observing, going, oh, you didn't answer that one very well. Right. So one of the things, the reason why they say that activity, because you've got to have exercise and so forth, they say 20 minutes, it's not just for the blood flow and the endorphins and so forth, but it's to shut down the inner voice. And so the reason to go for a walk or have exercise is you do it until it goes quiet upstairs. Because that's one of the biggest distractions. Because yes, you'll come back and you feel good because yes, you sweated out some toxins and so forth, but also it goes quiet. And that's one of the elements of in the flow state. And that's certainly one of the elements in the non-stressed state, is when does it go quiet up there? So are there any specific tools or recommendations or hacks on how to get a quiet in the mind?
I work more on not getting quiet as much as flipping what's going on in there.
Okay.
I would say the quiet part comes in, or the discipline of it comes in when you ask an empowering question, like, how can I solve this elegantly? That
Yes.
you don't try to answer it. You don't try to answer it. You let the answers come organically. And that has just been phenomenal for my clients to start to experience. If you force anything, you're going to have an equal force coming right back at you.
Mm.
So when you say, okay, how can I solve this? And your belly is soft, because when the tension comes in here, your belly's going to tighten. But if you ask that question and relax, amazing answers start to happen. And my son just went off, but when he asked that question once, and he said what was so amazing was he actually reached for his computer to answer a question. He actually started typing answers without even his brain saying, oh, I should be using my computer. Oh, I should tap out an outline.
Ah, right.
Figures
Okay.
did it. So I think that's what you're getting in the flow state. The body and the mind are all one. We're not separate. There's no but if you're in the stressed out state, you're going to have all those distractions and influences and things driving you. It's not pure energy. It's not pure.
Yeah.
So I really work to help people get into that pure state where the body and mind are one, and it's your answers are going to be coming in cool ways. Memories from 30 years ago, from a lesson you learned from someone. Those kinds of things are going to happen. So
what you've just said reminded me of a process, because how do you, once you've been triggered, because usually if you've got to get an answer, there's a triggering that says, oh, you got to get an answer quick, you're time bound and so forth. There's a process called the Macgyver Technique. And I'm sure people have heard of Macgyver. Came out in the 70s, and he's the guy who could make a rocket out of a safety pin and a piece of binder twine. Really amazing. And this came out from the guy who wrote the Macgyver scripts. And he said it was extraordinarily challenging because he'd put together a script, and then the night before they were saying, look, it's not going to work. We need you to rewrite it. And he literally had only 4 hours to rewrite this whole episode. And you think, what? So he discovered this process, which is a combination, and I'll share it because it's a combination of what you're saying as well as how do you get into a state of flow. And what it was is you sit down with a pen and paper and you write down the problem, specifically, whatever the problem is. I need to write an episode of Macgyver. I have only 4 hours. You put as much information into what the question is that you want an answer to. And it's in the writing down, preferred, not typing. Yes, you can type, but it's better if you handwrite.
Right.
And so what you're doing is you're slowing yourself down, and because you're being very clear and trying to get the overview, you're moving to that part of the brain, which is not the fragmented stress part, which is around individualization and more the sciencey fragmentation part. It's more the overview. This is the overview. This is the problem that I'm facing. This is what I need to have out of it. Step 1. Step 2 is you walk away. So you actually go away and you take a walk. It's a light walk or a light exercise. Maybe you do some ironing. Maybe you clean the dishes, wash the dishes or whatever it might be. But you deliberately use your body. So you've gone from the head into the body and you've stopped thinking about it. Then when you come back, you start writing again, and you write to answer the question. So let's just say, though, the answers aren't coming. You just pick something at random and start writing about that, and eventually the answers will come. And so what you're now doing is you're tapping into a more relaxed state, even though you're in a pressured time environment. It's very powerful.
Oh my
very
God.
Powerful.
That thing actually happened to me in real life.
Okay.
I was asked to play a piece by Mozart, and my piece was solo, and I got the music a couple weeks ahead of time. I'm practicing, and I hit a passage, and here's what my brain started to say. Oh crap, you can't play that fast enough. You're going to ruin the performance, right?
Yep.
So I smiled. I looked up in my head and I said, caught my brain going in a bad direction. I asked, how can I play this passage beautifully?
Nice.
Right away, I got a couple of little answers that I employed, but then I had to go pick up my son across town. So I packed up my violin, went across town. About 20 minutes later, it was like a booming male European voice spoke deep in my body, not in my head, and said,
Wow.
"You're screwing your bow too tightly. Release it 2 revolutions and you will play the passage just fine." Like this voice.
Wow.
It was a lesson from some 35 years ago at the University of Michigan from Jacob Krukmalnik. I remember working on fast music with him. My bow was too tight. And there's a whole I had 2 bows. I'd just gotten my good bow fixed. My other bow must have taken, you don't think about it. You just screw the bow tight and then release it.
Yeah.
And so I just went, released it 2 revolutions. Perfect passage. Perfect.
Wow. So the answer was there. It's how do you access it? Yeah, nice.
The answers are there. And there's so much today. We have answers at our fingertips. If we know, like you said, writing the question out like that flavor is beautiful. Get to some really profound answers for people. I love that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I want to welcome Joe here. Joe just came in and I haven't seen Joe in years. So I'm so happy to see you here, hon. We're gonna open up for questions and answers at the end too. But if you want to type in the chat any question, feel free. Bruce and I are really just having this organic conversation here. So, and we are recording. So just letting you know. So yeah, let's see. We had a couple of other things.
Okay, here's a question of you.
Okay.
What's the question I should have asked you?
Oh, that's a good one. What's a question you should have asked me? I have people ask me, isn't anxiety hereditary? Isn't it genetic? So,
wow.
They'll say, my mother was anxious all the time, or my father was very anxious, you know, so isn't it just hereditary? Like, I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
People will come to me thinking they don't have a choice because it is hereditary. And so, and that's a very to answer that question is very complicated, but on a more surface level, the answer is no. You imitated the habits of reactions that your parents and other people had. And just like you said, if you're prone to reacting because you grew up reacting, now you're going to react to everything. It's just going to pile on and pile on and pile on. And so, and people will say to me, but that's just the way I am. I'm like, no, it isn't. That's not the true you. That's you under the influence of stress hormones. Stress hormones are like a cocktail. You are under the influence. You really shouldn't even be operating a vehicle, to be honest. All you have to do is look at the stressed out parents taking their kids to school in the morning. They should not be driving those cars. They're like gripping the steering wheel and yelling at their kids in the back. And it's just incredible what I see every morning when I go out on my walk. It's like, please just slow down, slow your car down, relax your hands, and stop yelling at your children, please. Right? Joe, I believe, is a former teacher, so she had to deal with all that once those kids got to school. But you know, it's like, it's incredible how when you can, I lost my train of thought, just thinking about all that, but you get the idea that it's like, you know, when you say, oh, that's just how I am, that's you under the influence of the stress hormones. What if we can break the stress cycle?
Yeah.
I just had a boy, because I work with students as well as adults, and in COVID, the virtual learning has really harmed a lot of students. They don't know what they're doing. I had a boy who was in serious problems, and we just finished our last intro session together. So we finished my intro course, and so I asked him. He did a cool thing with a tool of mine called a double yellow line. He made a circle. On the half of this over here, double yellow line means you can't pass. You have to stay.
Yes.
Those are his chores, and those are his homework. And then over here is being with friends and video games. So I said, draw it for me. He draws it for me. Then I go, now show me how it works. He goes, okay, I get home from school and I start in here. I can't pass over there until I've done everything in this half. And then I pass over here and I go. So I said, okay, so tell me now, you've been doing this for a little while. You figured this out 2 weeks ago. How much time are you spending in each half? He goes, I'm spending 60-40, because we were talking about percentages. He goes, 60-40. I go, 60-40, huh? So 60% in your homework and chores. So you go, oh, no. 40% there, 60% over here. So I go, and he then says, oh, and before I started working with you, it was 95-5, 95% in the homework and chores.
Wow.
5% fun.
Yeah.
But now he is self-directing, and he's got 60% of his time now after school he can play.
Brilliant.
And that's because he's getting all his work done, and he ended up passing all of his classes, and that was not where he was 2 months ago. So it's so cool to see him create it, take a tool, create, and that's what my clients will do too. They'll create it. So he could have come in and said, oh, I'm just anxious and I procrastinate because that's what my mom does or my dad does, right? It's not true. It's not true. It's real easy to think that, but it's not true. And when you can start to gain a little toehold and see that there's another side to you, because most people have been locked in the stress cycle for most of their life.
Yeah.
So when they can break out, and you know this through your work too, when they can break out and see a bit of hope and possibility, wow, now what's possible? And I asked him that. I go, wow, what are you going to do with all that free time now? He's get to create something totally new. He gets to do some really cool things now that before seemed absolutely impossible, because homework just took all the time. Not when you're focused, not when you don't have stress hormones coursing through your brain.
Got it.
You can get it done. So yeah, what's the question I should have asked you, Bruce?
Okay. So there are some obvious stresses, which is time, lack of money, relationships, those are the obvious ones, getting older or those ones. But I'd like to talk for a little bit about a more subtle range that most people aren't aware of. But once you get them, it's like plugging up the holes. So from an energetic perspective, I think most of us are energy colanders, that is energy in, energy out. So what we're doing by reducing the stress is we become more like energy chalices. We can hold it. So my experience is that most people don't know themselves. What do I mean? Well, we have an identity is how we see ourselves, how we define ourselves to ourselves. And so you can say, well, how many identities are there? Well, there's lots. I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a friend. There are multiple identities. In fact, hundreds of identities. Now, I was talking to a leader. He's a CEO of a large company, and he had bought into this company for 5 years. So he bought shares and he was due out after 5 years. 3 years in, he'd lost his mojo because he didn't have any influence on where it was going. He didn't like what was happening and he couldn't do anything about it. And he was just deflated. So he recognized that he was starting to go through the motions. He could go through the motions and walk out the other end, but he wouldn't feel good about himself. And he also wanted a bigger job at the end of it. So he knew that he had to sharpen himself up. So my question to him was, or one of the questions was, okay, so what are you, a CEO? Are you a leader? Are you an advocate? Are you a champion? What are you? About his self-identification as a leader. Right. Now, he'd never really been challenged because, I'm a CEO. Well, are you, or are you a leader? So we determined that he was a leader. Okay. So here's the kicker. What sort of leader? Put an adjective in front of that. What sort of leader are you? And he went, I never really thought about it. Hadn't really chatted. So we went through and we spent quite a bit of time and we played with different phrases, different adjectives. And ultimately, the one that really resonated for him was, I am an energizing leader. Now, as soon as he heard that, he went, that's exactly who I am. That's what I'm about. That's what's important. And the impact of that had a glow period of about a week, actually. He said that every time he was looking and seeing, well, am I energy? Am I giving energy? Am I not just giving it, but is that causing energy in the person?
Right.
So he now knew more about himself. And so he had one less place he was leaking. So I look at it from an energy perspective, and that was a stress. He didn't know he had that stress, but that was a stressor. And so we've now looked at different other elements of his life, what's important, what is he as a partner, as a husband, and so on. And so now he's got reference points, real reference points, as to how he needs to behave in those circumstances. So that's more at a nuanced, more subtle level of de-stressing.
Yeah.
But that's, if you look at it from an energetic perspective, we are leaking energy in places we didn't know we were leaking energy. So that's just another way of looking at the stress. Yeah. I look at it from stress as an energy leaker. Where are we leaking energy?
I love that. That's beautiful. That's really great. Well, our time is up. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll just open up for questions if that sounds good, Bruce.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.